Okay, so today we're learning about 0 as an exponent and about what negative exponents are. So the first thing you have to understand when you're doing these, and what will make this course or this part of the course so much easier, if you understand the difference between the base and an exponent and what base is being raised to an exponent. So 3 is your exponent here, and then the base is x. So the thing being raised to the power is your base. So here 2 is the base, x is the exponent. Here 5 is the exponent, okay? But it's not raising the 2. This is the only part here, okay? That because there's no parentheses, the base is only x and the exponent is 5. So be wary of that. If there's no parentheses, then we know that the base is only the very first thing connecting that exponent. Okay, so let's continue on. So anything to the 0 power is 1. Okay, and why is that? Well, anything to the 0 power is 1. Let's do this in 2 different ways. Okay, the first way we'll do this is anything divided by itself is 1. So x to the 5th divided by x to the 5th is 1. And we know that we could just do x to the 5th divided by x to the 5th and subtract the exponents. 5 minus 5 is 0, so x to the 0 power. That means that these two things are exactly the same. X to the 0 equals 1. It basically just means there are 0 x's to multiply. So there you go. Okay, so let's try some examples. 7 to the 0 power. Well, 0 is raising the base of 7, so this is simply 1. Here, what is being raised to the 0 power here? Well, if you put this in your calculator, it will tell you the correct answer. But what you have to remember is that negative on there is like -1 times 4 to the 0. That negative is like an invisible -1 times. We do that, it's a shorthand way of writing it, so we don't have to write -1 times all the time. So that's just the way it is. So if you see a negative and it's not in parentheses, then that means that that negative is not being raised to the 0 power. So here the base is only 4. So 4 to the 0 power is 1. So this whole answer is actually -1. So this is what I'm saying. These parentheses here combine the whole thing so that the whole thing is being raised to the 0 power. So the whole thing is raised to the 0 power is 1. This one, there's no parentheses, so that x is the only thing being raised to the 0 power. So x to the 0 is 1. So that's 1. But that 4 stays 4. So this whole thing is grouped with the parentheses. That whole thing is being raised to the 0 power, so that's 1. So the bottom one is easy. We just did that one. 4x to the 0 power. That's 1 on the bottom. But 3x to the 0 power, there's no parentheses there, so only 3 to the x. Only x is being raised to the 0 power, not the 3. So that's 3 over 1, or 3. Okay. So now some negative exponents. So hopefully you understand 0. I'm going to explain negative exponents in a similar fashion. Similar, but not exact. So negative exponents is another way to write the base as a fraction. So you remember the base, in this case, each of these bases are x. So if we're going to write the base is going to be x, is going to be written as a fraction. So there's 2 ways to do this one. We can write this out in the extended version. Okay. So 3 on the top, 5 on the bottom. Anything divided by itself is 1. Those go away, so I'm left with 1 on the top because there's only 1 left on the top, and x squared on the bottom, so hopefully that's understandable. The other way we can do it is when we divide, we subtract exponents. So if we do 3 minus 5, it's always the top one minus the bottom one, we get -2. So that's x to the -2 power. So I just did the exact same question, following math rules and all that stuff. Those two things are the exact same thing. Pretty exciting. So basically, if I write x to the negative 2, it's the same as writing x1 over x squared. So let's go over that. So the procedure, what we're going to be just doing is simplifying things with negative exponents. So we're going to use our laws of exponents. You have to know them. Multiply, you add exponents. Power to power, you multiply. Divide, you subtract. Those are, key to doing this right now. Then if you have a negative exponent left, just know that the base that it's going to is in the wrong place. And so just move it. There's two places in a fraction. There's a top and a bottom. If you have a negative exponent in the top, you move it to the bottom, and now it's positive. If it's in the bottom, you move it to the top, and it's positive. That's it. There's only two places in a number or in a term. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just do some basic examples, and then we'll use our laws of exponents. So this is just basic examples with negative exponents. So a to the negative 6. Well, the base is a. So I like to make it so that there's two parts. There's the top and the bottom. So for example, this one here, there's already a top and the bottom, so I don't have to do that. But anytime there isn't and I have a negative exponent, I make it a fraction just so that I know where to move things to. So a to the negative 6. Negative 6 tells me that a is in the wrong place, so a has to move to the bottom. The 6 becomes positive, and we have to have something on top, so we put the 1 on top. Okay, same deal here. The negative 8 is an exponent, so that tells me that its base is in the wrong place. There's no parentheses, so the base is just y. Okay, so y moves down, y to the 8th moves down, and that negative 5 stays on the top. So it's negative 5 isn't an exponent here. It's just a number, so it doesn't move. It doesn't mean anything. So here we go. A couple more. So this is a fraction. That negative 2 means that the base is in the wrong place. The base is what's in this parentheses here. So that 2x squared moves to the bottom. And remember, it becomes positive when it moves. That negative 7 stays on the top because it's not being raised to any negative exponent. Then we can do our exponent rules if we need to. And, multiply in. So 2 squared is 4 and x squared. Now here we have a negative 7 on the bottom. X to the negative 7 on the bottom. That means the base needs to move up. X to the 7th. We can put it over 1, but we don't need to. Okay, the only reason we have this 1 here is because you can't just write nothing on the top of a fraction, but you can write 1, nothing on the bottom of a fraction. Pretty double standard there, but what are you going to do? Oop. Alrighty. So here we are. Let's do some where we actually have to do our exponent rules. So the first thing that you see here, hopefully, is that there's a negative for the whole fraction. So if you have a negative for an entire fraction, I like to just make it positive and move it to the top. It makes it so that it's not confusing as to where it goes. Okay, so now we just do our exponent rules. So divide the numbers. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. And negative 3 minus a negative 1. So I'm just writing it. We're subtracting this minus this. So that is y to the negative 2 power. So it's negative 3 plus 1, which is negative 2. Okay, so it's just a lot of signed numbers that you have to just get used to. So now we have to make these the negative exponent here positive. So we'll make this a little fraction. Y to the negative 2 is the thing being raised to the negative 2 power, so that moves to the bottom and becomes positive, and that negative 2 stays on the top. So whenever we divide, so one of the things you should probably notice here is I divided, when I subtracted the exponents, the answer always goes on the top of the fraction. So it's always the top exponent minus the bottom exponent, and the answer goes on top. Okay, and then I have to simplify because I did get a negative exponent, so then you have to keep going. Alrighty, another example. Power to a power rule. So let's do our exponent rules. Distribute in. It's power to a power. So we have x to the negative 1, y to the negative 5, z squared. Oop, that should be a z. Okay, so now that I've done that, I want to make the negative exponents positive. So I make it a fraction so I know where to move these. So the only two that are negative are x and y. So z squared stays on the top, and x and y move. So you can leave it as x to the first, y to the fifth. They've moved, so now they're positive. All right. So division is the one that we have to focus on a little, because you have to just make sure when you subtract your sign numbers. So here I'm going to do 5 minus a negative 4. So I'm just going to write that out. Ooh, sorry. 5 minus a negative 4. So 5 minus a negative 4 is 9. So x to the 9th goes on top. And then these are the x's. And then the y is negative 4 minus a negative 2, which is negative 2. So it's y to the negative 2 power. Make it a fraction. X to the 9th stays on the top. Y squared goes to the bottom. Okay. Of course, there are other ways you can do this, but I don't know, this is the way I'm teaching it, I guess. So I hope you understand. So all we do is subtract negative 2 minus 5. Negative 2 minus 5 is x to the negative 7. Negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7. This is for the x's, and then the y's. 3 minus a negative 4, which is y to the positive 7. So the only one that's negative is the x. So that goes on the bottom. Oops, sorry. Oh, now it won't let me erase that, of course. So let's just make this better. X to the 7th, and the y stays on the top. So rewriting this so it's not, that's it, I quit. Y to the 7th stays on the top. X to the 7th was negative, so that goes to the bottom. All right, now you give these a try. Okay, see how they go? Remember, follow your rules of exponents. If anything is still negative, it moves. All right. Hope you have a nice day.